Move the approval of the minutes of January 2nd, 2024 with any needed approval or corrections.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3.
I think bullet 8 is a little tortured. There was a discussion of forming a TIF district form-based code at Taft's Corners. I think form-based code is just should be struck. Right.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, but defer to smarter people. Anything else on page 3? Page 4. So with that correction, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Public comment. This is a moment where anybody in the audience or anybody participating remotely is free to say, make any comment on anything. We do have a number of agenda items where people will be able to speak later, but you don't have to wait until then, but may make more sense to do that. But is there any public comment? Seeing none. Eric, do we have anybody?
No one on Zoom.
Okay. Next. Common level of appraisal.
Yeah.
Possible appeal.
Connect Bill in. Bill's getting connected here. So this is each year the State Office of Property Valuation Review completes an analysis of property values across the state to adjust each town's grantless values. The values are based on market value rather than assessed value. This is referred to as the common level of appraisal, or CLA. Our 2023 study set Williston's just above 69%. That's an 8% reduction from the 2022 study. Reminder for the board, the threshold for reappraisal is now based on the coefficient of dispersion, or the COD. A COD of over 20% requires a reappraisal, and Williston COD from the report is just about 13.5%. Projection speaking with our assessor is we're likely around 5 years away from a reappraisal using that methodology now. The CLA calculation still goes into the education tax calculation each year as it affects the equalized grantless value. Our assessors suggesting we file a formal appeal petition for this equalization study, which is within our purview. Our thought is there's a couple outliers on the low end bills that we could appeal, and we may yield making a reduction of 7.5% instead of 8%. Not a huge difference, but given where the education tax is trending, I think it could be helpful overall here. So I think, Bill, I've got you connected. You just need to unmute your microphone if you can hear me, if you have anything to add there.
There, can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear
Yes.
You. So I talked to the advisor earlier today, specifically with the appeal, and I've been a little further into it, but you indicated that commercial category where the outliers wasn't significant enough in the number of sales, so it washed out and only treated the CLA only treated as for the R1 residential over 6 acre and the R2, which is residential over 6 acres. It's still got a little more data to it, so I still recommend the select board appeal this, just so we can keep that window open.
Questions from the board?
Can you remind me what time period the data is collected from?
Sure, it's a 3-year non-time tested study, which means they go back 3 years of sales. And the sales year is April 1 to April 1. So the sales study that we're utilizing right now is reflected as sales from 2021, 22 to 23. And unfortunately, so we were all the towns, honestly, were kind of holding on to those 3rd year sales because after the pandemic started, that's when values started to go crazy. So everybody in the state, with the exception of the reappraisal accounts, is effectively under order for reappraisal in the next year, based upon the common level assessment. However, the state changed the law, so it's now reflected with the coefficient of dispersion.
Yeah.
And so that 85% threshold no longer applies to us. And also the state is trying to streamline reappraisals, so that we would be on a 6-year reappraisal cycle. With the announcement contractor doing roughly 65,000 appraisals a year in the state. And because we're pretty recent and our COB is pretty accurate, we wouldn't be in the cycle until the 4th or 5th year. So that potentially puts us out to 2029 for reappraisal.
Yeah, so the CLA is more about us versus other towns, right? Mostly for education tax equalization. But, so that was my question.
Yes, the CLA is to equalize the tax rate, so that each town is based upon what the value is, versus what they said.
Okay. And the reason that, right now we're looking at, for the current budget, we're looking at no increase in the grand list, but that is not, maybe that would affect next year's CLA.
So generally speaking, the CLA doesn't get impacted by our increases in our grand list at all. So there's been very small increases of 1 to 1.5% per year. Where it impacts it is when we pull sales go out and we have to accept the meter sales, where the sales is going up and up and up, and that pushes that CLA down. It would be more pressure.
Thinking of Taft's Corners selling for $100 million less, so this got to help your CLA at some point.
Right. Actually, that's kind of good. We placed you sold recently, and it sold for roughly $10 million less than it did back in 2017. So that kind of, that's the bad part of the retail market, and that we're facing some uncertain patch with retail market. But that's probably a discussion another time.
Other questions from the board?
Any reason not to appeal it?
No. Town's done this in the past.
What do we have the time?
There's no downside to it.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So if there are no further questions or comment, there is a proposed motion.
I'll move to authorize the chair of the select board to file a petition with the director of property valuation and review for a redetermination of the town's equalized education property value.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
So this brings us to the middle section of our agenda, which is all about property. Next item on the agenda, the wastewater allocation request for specific development.
I'll turn things over to Matt to walk the board through this.
Thanks. So before the select board tonight, we have a request from Snyder Homes to purchase up to 4,230 gallons per day of wastewater treatment capacity, also known as sewer allocation in Williston, from the encouraged specific development category of allocation that was established for the fiscal year 2024 attachment A to the sewer allocation ordinance. For FY24, the select board chose to place 10,000 gallons per day in this category. So the capacity does exist to sell under this encouraging specific development category. The purpose of this allocation would be to facilitate the construction of a new 38-unit apartment building at Finney Crossing. 6 of the proposed 38 apartments will be perpetually affordable at 100% of the area median income in compliance with the town's recently adopted inclusionary zoning. There is not currently enough capacity remaining in the new residential category of allocation to support this development during this fiscal year. Because the apartment construction at Finney would meet several important goals in the Williston Comprehensive Plan, which I'll go over, we are recommending as staff that the select board consider allowing the sale of capacity from the 2024 encouraging specific development category in attachment A. Just to bring everybody back to attachment A, which we'll be talking about just before you know it in another month or so. Each year, the select board adopts an attachment to the sewer allocation ordinance identifying various categories of development that will be supported by certain amounts of wastewater treatment capacity. And with the exception of the one we're talking about tonight, the encouraging specific development, once that's voted on, those categories can be sold out of by the town manager with the assistance of the public works director. So we have categories for new commercial, new residential, affordable housing, modifications to existing residential, environmental mitigation, et cetera. And with the exception of this category, once that budget is set, the sale of capacity from those categories is handled here in the office administratively. Encouraging specific development is a little different. It's a category that the select board does make a decision about during attachment A, but any party wishing to purchase capacity from that line in the sewer budget, so to speak, must come to the select board and specifically request to purchase that capacity. And what the ordinance says is this is capacity that should be sold to projects that will achieve goals of the town plan, which is what the rest of my memo kind of talks about. I've identified a couple of town plan goals that the construction of this project would support. The first few come from Chapter 3, the land use chapter of the bylaw, and they speak to the overall goal for Taft Corners to become a denser, more walkable, mixed-use downtown type environment. Particularly that new development in Taft Corners would be handled with a really careful eye towards building and site design, possibly even under a form-based code. And you know this plan was written in 2016 before the form-based code has been adopted. But it sort of anticipates that. So here we have proposed building and site fully in compliance with both the form-based code and the site development standards from both the form-based code and the bylaw. We're under review with this right now. We will have what's called our project review committee meeting on this between myself and representatives from Fire and Public Works, probably the first week of February. But my staff's taking it through our review checklist. This project complies with the form-based code. We just need to do the paperwork on that and hold our meeting. Furthermore, we have some discussion in community design that resonates with this project, including minimizing the amount of surface area dedicated to parking. There's parking provided underneath and behind this building, thus also minimizing the visual impact of parking. And then we have some statements about avoiding dead walls, which are large, blank, expanses of wall without windows or doors, especially where they face a street. As you can see from the rendering, that's not the case here. We have multiple entrances along the Market Street frontage, windows along the entire frontage, and in compliance with the form-based code, more than the minimum number of required units facing the street have balconies as well. So that's some of the design elements of this. Finally, we do have some housing goals in the town plan, including expanding housing opportunities, calling for a diverse type of living arrangements and types of housing, and considering the idea that the town might adopt inclusionary zoning and require some of those new homes to be perpetually affordable. Lo and behold, Williston has adopted inclusionary zoning. This project comes in under that with its 15% of units affordable at 100% AMI. So it aligns quite well with the goals of the town plan. As I said when I introduced this encouraging specific development category has 10,000 gallons per day in it. Staff is recommending the select board vote to authorize the sale of up to 4,230 gallons per day. That's the full amount of capacity that's needed to support the building. There is a possibility that available capacity could be purchased to support those couple of affordable units out of the affordable category. But because the sale of capacity can change day to day, I left it at the full amount requested, just in case somebody got in under the wire and bought all the affordable capacity. There would be authorization to buy everything needed for this building out of this encouraging specific development category. So there could be there could be a scenario in which the applicant doesn't need to buy all 4,230 from this category. So that said, again, there's 10,000 there. Applicants looking for 4,230, and happy to answer any questions you have.
Questions from the board?
So anything else on the horizon for that capacity?
There could be.
I mean, it's
We
only
haven't had-
4 months now, right?
Yeah.
5 months?
We haven't had any other requests, but the famous 6-story building is in a similar position in which it would need to purchase capacity from the new residential category or this category in order to move forward. Right now, the only path forward is under encouraging specific development. That applicant hasn't made that request yet.
I can't remember the numbers, but are these 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, or efficiency apartments? What's,
The applicants are here tonight and can answer that. I think we have a mix of 1 and 2 bedrooms.
So there's a 12 market rate units on per center homes. There are 12 one-bedroom units, 20 two-bedroom units, and then in terms of the affordable, there are 3 one-bedroom units and 3 two-bedroom units.
Are those in those other numbers or on top of those other numbers? Oh, they're not. They're added to the other ones. That's how we get the ones in the memo. Got it.
3 1-bedroom and how many
3.
2-bedroom?
3 two-bedroom.
3 2-bedroom.
So it's a mix of housing types within the market and also with the affordable.
And I forget what the, when you, how many gallons per day you need for a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom? You had those numbers out at one time, I remember.
75.
Yeah, 75 for a one-bedroom, 135 for a two-bedroom.
75 for a 1-bedroom and how many for a 2-bedroom?
135.
135.
Other questions?
Astonishingly not. I don't have any other questions.
Yes,
You took my only question, Jean. So,
I was being Mike for that question.
You're probably saving up for later.
Yeah. I got lots later.
So if there are no other questions or conversation, there is a proposed motion.
So I'd move to sell up to 4,230 gallons per day of wastewater capacity to Snyder Homes under the encouraged specific development category of the wastewater allocation ordinance attachment A.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Thank you very much. So, next on the agenda, unified planning work plan.
So I'll give a brief
Alright, so-
overview
Yeah,
of this, and then if there's questions, Matt's here. But this is something the town does every year. This plan summarizes transportation and land use planning activities for the Regional Planning Commission staff and its member agencies and other transportation and planning agencies for work in the region. It's updated annually. They take requests from municipalities, and they have a committee that decides how to fund these programs within this work plan. This is receiving state, local, and federal funding and how it's allocated at the regional level. So every year we prepare project requests. Planning Office and Public Works Department prepare the requests. Those are included with your agenda. Matt Belanger and Public Works Director Broussard have looked those over. We can take any questions on the requests if the board has them. If not, there's a motion to consider.
Questions from the board for either Eric or Matt?
I was happy to see South Brownell and Marshall Avenue on the list because I've had actually people reach out to me about waits at that intersection, and I've gotten stuck in it myself a few times. It's kind of discouraging when you're sitting at the Kia dealer. And so that's great to see that. And I think it's very interesting. Another thing, my first time through on this year to see this, but I think this was a really good tool for looking into things that we may need to deal with in the future.
Yeah, it's a good opportunity to leverage all these different sources of funding that the Regional Planning Commission controls. And, it's our opportunity to advocate for how to get those things up in the work plan for the year ahead.
Right.
based on past years' approval of different projects that we've put forward, what do we think the likelihood is that the CCRPC will fund these, prioritize these?
We usually do pretty well with our requests, and we do interact with CCRP staff and leadership ahead of this to make sure that what we're requesting is in the right category, that it makes sense within their work plan, and, you know, which items get federal transportation dollar match and which items don't. We have conversations about what their capacity is going to be. Ultimately, it's a decision by the actual regional planning commission, which is a, you know, appointed board. It's not the staff, but our track record here has been good. We do hear more and more that more Chittenden County communities are asking for more help from the regional planning commission every year. So that said, I still think we're competitive, and you know, really appreciate on our end having the staff capacity available to make these requests. It does take quite a bit of work on the back end just for us to be in a place to even go ask for help. So appreciate being able to do that.
Other questions from the board? If not, there is a proposed motion.
I'll move to approve the projects proposed for inclusion in the Regional Annual Unified Planning Work Program for fiscal year 2025.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
Thank you.
That brings us up to our 7:30 start time for the public hearing. So I will open the hearing by reading the obligatory portion of the notice. And then I'm going to turn it over to Emily. The Williston Selectboard will hold a public hearing to receive comment on proposed changes to the existing Williston 2016-2024 Comprehensive Plan, Town Plan pursuant to 24 VSA Section 4384 and the Williston Unified Development Bylaw pursuant to 24 VSA 4442. The public hearing will take place on Tuesday, January 16, 2024 at 7:30 p.m. in the Beckett McGuire Meeting Room of the Williston Town Hall, located at 7900 Williston Road. Remote participation is also offered. So with that, the hearing has been commenced. And Emily, I believe you have a bit of information for us.
Yes, thank you. So this is a public hearing on town plan and bylaw amendments in support of the Glaser specific plan. Specific plan is a unique zoning tool, and it's codified in Chapter 9 of the bylaws. This option exists because it's impossible for conventional zoning to anticipate all possibilities for achieving town plan goals and objectives. A specific plan is a guideline for the development of a site presented in the form of proposed amendments to the town plan and zoning bylaw. If the development proposed by the applicants is not made, the underlying zoning remains in place. The specific plan process cannot begin without a formal finding by the Planning Commission that a substantial benefit could result. So the Glaser specific plan proposes an approximately 109 unit residential development with the donation of public open space to the town, total of about 50 acres, including 15 acres of view shed along Mountain View Road and Old Stage Road. This is a view that's specifically mentioned in the town plan, as well as 35 acres of pasture, wetland, and forest, including lands that are leased to Windswept Farm, the neighboring property. Currently, the land is undeveloped, and it's located in the residential zoning district and municipal water and sewer service area. Substantial benefit. The applicant has proposed an open space substantial benefit. View shed, pastures, wetlands, forests are all open space types that are encouraged in the town plan and incentivized to be protected in the zoning bylaw. As part of the Planning Commission process, there was an appraisal done where the land was appraised, the view shed of about $1.85 million and the 35 acres of pasture, wetland, and forest at about $35,000. Mere compliance with the bylaw is not a substantial benefit. The substantial benefit must be an action above and beyond the requirements of the bylaw. The Planning Commission identified two ways in which the Glaser specific plan goes above and beyond. It's donating land to the town where the bylaw incentivizes permanent protection via an easement or a site plan designation. A second way it goes above and beyond is by conserving viewshed land that is minimally protected by the open space development standards. So a conventional subdivision would not be required to donate land to the town and would probably see this viewshed land more impacted by development. Lastly, planning staff identified a third way the specific plan goes above and beyond, and that's by conserving farmland of local importance, by minimizing encroachment and clustering development. A conventional subdivision would probably see more of the pasture lands developed. What follows is a viewshed rendering that shows how this development would preserve the views of the Green Mountains. Page 3 of the memo outlines the town plan and bylaw amendments that you would be voting on. 3 of them are clerical. So chapter 13 in the town plan, where the views are listed as unprotected, would be now recognized as a protected view, as well as recognizing the other open space land that would be donated to the town. That's the only town plan amendment proposed. There's 3 bylaw amendments. The first one is a substantive amendment to chapter 11. That chapter is called Including Affordable Homes and Residential Growth Management. So the growth management process for the Glaser specific plan, they would have to achieve a score of 50 points. That's higher than the typical minimum score for a project. And they would also not be permitted to build more than 18 dwelling units per year, well, limited to the number of administrative permits that could be allocated in a fiscal year. And this would be a separate process from the newly adopted inclusionary zoning or the residential growth management process. They would still need to achieve a score, but they would have their defined allocation schedule. Chapter 26, street trees, clarifying that the exemption from street trees to preserve a scenic vista applies. In this case, it applies to the frontage along Mountain View Road and Old Stage Road. In chapter 39, this recognizes the existence of the specific plan and codifies its required substantial benefit, as well as includes some of the mechanisms that would be needed at discretionary permit, like an irrevocable offer to the town for the land, floating easements for the paths and trails. And lastly, Appendix K. So this would be a new appendix in the bylaw. The site plan, the growth management questionnaire, every document through the select board process, planning commission, and advisory committee process will all be bundled up. If the specific plan is approved, this must go forward to the development review board. And the DRB would then have all of these documents available. If any questions come up in their public hearing and their site plan review process, they can refer back. They can refer back to the site plan that would be adopted into the bylaw to make sure that the discretionary permit fully complies with the goals and intent of the specific plan. And I will pause there before talking about the Planning Commission's new recommendation.
So are there questions so far? There is the Planning Commission recommendation is something that we should take up and explore.
Just a question. The DRB's role would be their normal role of reviewing the design and then also ensuring that the design meets what we based our decision on. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah, I didn't mean to rush people. If you have more questions or
You're always rushing me, Ted. I always have questions.
that's
You're
what
very patient.
you were saving up. Okay, so the Planning Commission recommendation, the boundary line, can you walk us through that?
Yes, so this is page 4 of your memo. Tonight, the select board is holding a public hearing on amendments, including a site plan that describe 50 acres of open space, including 15 acres of viewshed and 35 acres of pasture wetland forest. A configuration that would exclude about 2.5 acres of forest from town-owned open space, shown in figure 4 below. This configuration is different from the original version transmitted by the Planning Commission, which is figure 3 below, where there'd be about 53 acres of open space, including 38 acres of this forested wetland area. The land in question is the lowest valued open space in the substantial benefit. It appraised at less than $1,000 per acre, whereas the viewshed land value is about $123,000 per acre. To note, the 15 acres of viewshed is not changing here. So this pond boundary line adjustment was discussed at the informational session on November 21st. Throughout the specific plan process with the advisory committee and the planning commission, we knew that the pond should not be donated to the town because it's a liability for the town. And it also goes with the house next door that was formerly owned by the Glazers and is now owned by the McElroys. Ultimately, the goal for talking about this pond boundary line adjustment is to ensure that the layout approved by the select board aligns as closely as possible to the layout that would be submitted to the development review board during permitting. It is better for the DRB to review a site plan or open space acreage rather than less. It makes sense to, though this pond issue is minor in the grand scheme of the substantial benefit and this significant process the town has gone through, it's important to make sure that it goes through public process. So on January 2nd, the Planning Commission made a recommendation to you guys for a different configuration where the town would retain acreage of the 2.5 acres of forest. Their version is shown in figure 5 on the right. They also recommended adding a notation to the site plan that would require a floating path or trail easement near the pond. I would like to note that the property owner, Jack Glaser, has not had an opportunity to comment on this at the Planning Commission meeting, so it would be appropriate this evening for him to talk with you guys about the pond BLA. At the very bottom, I propose 2 options for your consideration tonight. You could move forward as things have been warned, the 50 acres. That path trail easement would be required through conventional bylaw process. And the applicant could still voluntarily meet the Planning Commission's recommendation when they move forward to a pond BLA application. The other option for your consideration would be to accept the Planning Commission's recommendation. You would close the hearing this evening and then open a new one on February 6th. This would give us time to rewarn the acreage that's listed in the town plan and bylaw amendments. So bumping it from 50 to 51. And also that notation, it would create some redundancies where that path trail easement would be required by a notation on the site plan in addition to the standard bylaw requirements. Thank you.
Sorry to be confused. So the warning that we're working with tonight is figure 4, and that the new
Correct.
recommendation is figure 5, and figure 5 would probably require a postponement in the hearing, or a
A
postponement in the.
new hearing,
The hearing?
a new hearing.
A new hearing. Yep.
And that's what the planning commission is recommending.
Yep, the Planning Commission recommends figure 5.
By doing that, and by putting in the trail, you know, that's another, my thought is, you know, making sure the land's conserved, you know, not just given to the town. But as you explained a month ago, that it is conserved. The town can't do anything with that property once it's given to the town, correct?
For the open space, the town can only do things with the land that upholds a substantial benefit. So farming, forestry, the view shed could probably do some limited things in terms of park amenities. The path and trail easements come from town plan and official map goals for path and trail connectivity. So the desire for this additional easement would give the town options to create a path connection towards Coyote Run or Northridge, between Northridge and Martell. So these floating easements would give the town options to achieve connectivity goals across the open space.
How does, the Glazers and the developers feel about all this.
Yeah, I suppose we should ask that question. Yeah.
The question I just asked.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, Ken, do you want to come up and, Mr. Glaser?
Like, it'd be nice to get their opinion on it.
Thank you.
Well,
Yeah, for the record, Ken Beliveau, 683 Maple Street, Waterbury Center, representing the applicant. Jack Glaser of Shelburne now. So, yes, Mike, it would be good to get the opinion of the property owner. The property owner not only didn't get a chance to give his opinion about the process that the planning commission used to make the recommendation, we weren't even notified of it ahead of time. So, to say that the process by which that recommendation was derived and articulated is flawed is at some point an understatement. We were asked to map out the pond. That's what we tried to do. And the only specific instructions that we got was, in talking to Emily, she said appropriately, we want to make it so that when this goes to the DRB can figure out really clearly where exactly the lines are supposed to be. So, you want to make it as easy for them as possible so that they're not having a big, long debate about what did the select board actually approve or not approve. So our engineer and surveyor, the way they drew the line was to have a shape that would be easily recognizable to anybody out in the field, which is something that you want to do when you do surveying work. So they started from what's essentially a corner pin at Northridge, which is easy to identify, and then draw a line down to map out that area. Now, in terms of the impact of this area on the substantial public benefit, the open space, and all of the things that we've been talking about with the Planning Commission and the committee and all that over the past year or so, this area was of the lowest value and received the least amount of attention because it doesn't affect the view shed, as Emily stated. It has no bearing on the operation of Windswept Farm, which was also a big part of what it was we were, trying to achieve as part of the specific plan. That there had been some discussion about a possible trail that might connect through Northridge and that might connect across to Coyote Run. Yes, that was talked about. For you to approve the plan as we've submitted it with the boundary line as we submitted it, that doesn't preclude any of that. What you can't see on that graphic is how much area is still available as part of the open space that would still allow a potential connection. A connection that, as Emily mentioned in the official map, is actually not a high priority status. It's a relatively low priority status. So it's on the official map, but it's not high priority. That there have been members of at least one member, perhaps others on the Planning Commission, have tried to elevate that. It doesn't square completely with adopted town policy. So for you to approve the plan with the boundary line adjustment as we've proposed, it would not preclude any of that. That a trail might go through there is also not a foregone conclusion. So that there might be an easement for a trail doesn't necessarily mean that there would be a trail. This whole part of town is wet. So to get approval from the state of Vermont to locate, whether it's a primitive trail or a paved path or something like that, you should not assume that that is going to occur because it may in fact never occur. I'm not saying it won't, but the reality is that the nature of the land in that area is wet. So, that's, Jack, I don't know if you would like to add anything to that.
Yeah, just 2 points. The first point is because we were given the instruction from the town staff that we should do what we could in order to exclude the pond from the land that we would donate to the town. We worked with our neighbor, the McElroys. Mark is actually here today because when he saw what the planning commission had proposed, he was quite upset. So we worked out a plan for us to transmit the land to them. And I will just, so that's one. We've already worked out a deal which seemed like it was going to be fine for all of the landholders and all the parties involved. And two, we thought earlier that we had basically completed the process, submitted our proposal to the town, and we were going to hold a hearing today. And what we learned very late last week was that that wasn't the case, that there may be additional constraints. Already one was put in a memo to the select board by the planning commission. You know, and frankly, I don't have any faith at this point that there won't be yet another memo between now and a future hearing that might come up. So to me, it just calls into question the whole integrity of the process. Like, I think I've heard it said that a flawed process will produce a flawed result. And I think that's what we have here. And so I oppose to the change that was proposed by the planning commission.
Yeah, thank you.
Questions?
So Emily, the planning commission really wants this for the future, a potential future path. Is that they're not here to speak for themselves, so. Don't go too far, gentlemen, just
Stay close. Could you re-ask the question, please?
So the planning commission is suggesting this because of a potential future path. Is there any other reason that they want to make this 1 acre change that they've expressed?
I think just retaining as much of the forested land as possible, and then keeping options open for the path connectivity, even though the existing bylaw standards would get that floating path or trail easement through the standard BLA process.
Actually, I was going to ask that. I didn't quite understand the difference between figure 4 and figure 5, what the path difference between the two of them are.
The path difference wouldn't be the same, or the path would be the same. We would still get a floating easement in either scenario. The site plan change would be more forest would stay in town ownership. But in either scenario, it would still pretty much be open space because that land, that forested land, it probably has wetlands. So whether it's the town or owned by a private landowner, they wouldn't be able to develop it or not very easily because of possible wetland constraints and habitat area.
I think we're all learning here as we go through this process. I've learned a lot. I don't know everything. The integrity means a lot to me. I think, in the future, it'd be nice to see more energy efficiency homes and things being more part of the process than just wastewater and town paths and conservation. I think, the future and energy efficiency is very important.
Some of that's part of that 50 points they have to make, right?
Yeah, Mike, that's a great point, and thank you for reminding me. So that was something the Planning Commission felt very strongly about as well. And the way the growth management statement is worded, the project can score points in the energy efficiency category based on the old version of that chapter or the recently adopted one where there's far more options to get energy points and better incentives for energy, or if it gets amended in the future and there's more incentives added, they have flexibility to achieve that 50-point score. The new energy efficiency standard is a lot more enticing and has better options.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's an important thing going forward. I believe that, as as they explained, they did what they're supposed to do originally, what they were asked to do.
So, Mr. Chair, do we have to decide which one of these we want to hear a public hearing on, or are we making the decision
we-
to see if we're going to hold a public hearing?
We can only hold a public hearing on the plan that was actually warned. And so, and I'm at the risk of demonstrating my ignorance, that my understanding is that that would comport to figure 4. Site plan is warned by the select board for public hearing November 2023.
So should we decide if that's what we want to do now, before we let folks have an opportunity to speak?
Well, we kind of war gamed this out a little bit, and there are difficulties with both approaches. If we just say, okay, you know what, no hearing tonight, thanks for coming.
In the snow?
That's not good.
Right.
On the other hand, though, if we take, well, I don't want to say evidence, if we input from people tonight, in anticipation that we're actually going to have another hearing in February, then is that information that we hear tonight also, do people have to come back and repeat themselves in February? So that can be part of the official record in February. And I think the answer to that would be no, if our minutes are very good and we just take them and plug them into any decision that we made in February.
Yeah, we could even have a transcript written.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
So that would be if this new boundary is something that we would consider, then my thought would be that we keep the hearing on for today, let people have their say and get input from everybody, and then we would have to have another duly warned hearing in February, where that information would hopefully be fresh in our minds and weigh in on our decisions.
That would be if we decided,
That's if, right.
so procedurally, we're going to do the public hearing regardless today. But do we make the decision to warn a second public hearing prior so that folks can have the knowledge? Like, are we going to, we as a group, decide that before they speak? Because then that may impact what they say, or do we, I don't know.
I had a chance to respond to Mr. Ishin's question about the neighbors' opinions. We're on the
Just
Jason Lander spot.
Yep. You will absolutely have that, but give us a second, okay?
Sure.
We're still ruminating. This is a unique situation.
So could we have the hearing, and then as a board, we would move to voting on a specific plan, and if we wanted to go with the new one, we would vote to not go forward with the specific plan,
Right. Or
hold it and have another hearing.
just not have a vote at all.
Sure, we could postpone, whatever,
Right.
table it, whatever, right? Okay.
Yeah, if I may, what you could do is, what's been presented from the Planning Commission transmitted on January 2nd is a substantive change from what you warned. So if you were to decide, you hold a hearing tonight, you close the hearing, and then you could consider action on what you warned to accept the specific plan as it is proposed. If you close the hearing, get to discussion, and you decide you want to warn a new hearing with that substantive change, it would be a matter of, we would warn that for February the 6th to do that. No formal actions required on the plan itself this evening. It's more of, with any bylaw amendment, if you have a substantive change that you want to amend as part of your hearing process. For example, we did with form-based code a couple of years ago. So one pathway is you hold the hearing, receive comments, you close the hearing, and then you can make a decision point if you want to consider the plan as warned tonight, or if you haven't heard the testimony and the Planning Commission's transmission and the comments from the applicant and other folks, if you want to decide whether or not you want to warn that new hearing with that line changed as part of this project.
So if we decided that we were not going to warn a second public hearing though, and we're not going to accept the Planning Commission's recommended change, to the BLA, the pond BLA. We still don't have to vote tonight though on the specific plan. Like we could table that decision.
It's up to you. You have an agenda item to
on the
consider
agenda,
action if
right.
you want.
We don't have to. Isn't that number 9 on our agenda?
Yeah, that,
You can consider action after you close the
the
hearing.
only vote we can take tonight is whether to approve this as transmitted
Right.
in November.
But we could also choose to table it for whatever reason, if we did. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yep,
just-
that's your purview.
Okay.
Yeah, but if we did not schedule another hearing in February, then I'm not sure why we wouldn't.
Right, I just, yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Nope.
So can I ask the substantive question about the change that, I can easily wrap my head around the fact that there's a different boundary that is coming in and the reasons for that, but the site plan that is officially warned for hearing tonight, what is the difference between what we could vote on tonight versus what the planning commission has now submitted relative to paths, floating easements, et cetera? What is the difference?
In terms of paths, nothing.
Okay.
They're the same.
Easement?
So the specific plan, we're getting a couple different floating easements in different locations. Those would stay the same. For this pond BLA to move forward, it would go through the Development Review Board as well. And that's where the connectivity standards and official map would come into play. So having it as a notation on the specific plan is, a second level of assurances that's already stated in the bylaw, but it's, highlighting it once again for this specific spot. But a conventional BLA application here, we would get that floating easement. So in terms, that's that row in the table, it's pretty much the same for the path and trail. You either get it by the bylaws or you get it by a special note. But that path or floating trail easement would still be the same.
Would it be more set in stone if we went with the most recent planning commission proposal, because it would be a notation and therefore it would tell the DRB with more specificity what they are supposed to factor in?
Yes,
Okay.
but slightly so.
But what?
But only marginally so. It is more of an insurance, but it's not. I still think the standards in the bylaw are strong.
Okay. And those standards in the bylaw are something that everybody had in mind when this original plan was submitted to us and that we're here to talk about tonight, the November plan. Okay, well, so the change, the motive behind this, the planning commission's change doesn't sound like the floating easement is really the driving force behind it.
It's mainly driven by a particular planning commission member who's been very vocal about this path and floating trail, and this desired connectivity. I do want to echo what Ken said about the physical challenges of probably making this connection a reality due to state wetland regulations. And when you do look at this broader area with wetlands on Glaser, Northbridge, and Martell, a more realistic path alignment might be along Mountain View Road and then coming down through the golf course where Summerfield is proposed, or coming down through Martell to Coyote Run. The Conservation Commission did not recommend that this path easement. The Conservation Commission and the Specific Plan Advisory Committee both felt that the forested and wetland area should stay that way. We should get the floating easements, but the path connectivity, they're not so sold on this location for actually building something.
Who knew this would be the most controversial part of this development?
So, and Ken and Mr. Glaser, I'll refer to you, the applicant. you're opposed to the newest proposal from the Planning Commission. I understand that your concerns about process, and I very deeply share them. But substantively, what is the objection?
Okay,
Don't incur the wrath of Scott.
After a few years away, I've got out of the habit of all the things I'm supposed to do. Well, if for nothing else, there's a temporal aspect here. We were really hoping that we would get a decision from the board tonight, and maybe that's asking for a lot, but we've spent well over a year working on this, attended various meetings with the Planning Commission and the committee, and tried to work through all of the issues. And as I said earlier, we were just trying to do what we were told to do, and to do it using sound engineering and surveying practices. Emily had told us we would like to have something that it goes to the DRB, they can figure it out really easily. So that's what we tried to do. Mr. Glaser has worked with Mr. McElroy to try to work out a deal, because if this pond gets mapped out, it's got to go somewhere, right? So where does it go? It goes to the neighboring property owner. So they reached some kind of an agreement on that. And I know Mr. McElroy has some words that he's going to want to share with you. So we felt like we were doing what we were supposed to do. Mr. Glaser was trying to work through this as a way of, well, the pond's got to go somewhere. We've been told, get rid of it because we don't want it because it's a liability, and so we're trying to do that, and we got to put it somewhere. So the logical place is to the neighboring property owner. As I said before, this area under discussion in terms of its value as a resource for the town, whether it's the viewshed or the operations of Windswept Farm or any of that, those are non-issues. It's not. And in terms of its value to the town in some other way, now I would understand it as, does it have some resource value because there are trees there and it's a wooded area and it contributes to the ecosystem? Yes. And it becomes part of the McElroy's property, it would still do all of those same things. I don't know if it's realistic to say that to go with the proposal that we've submitted, if it eliminates any real options for the town in terms of potential trail easement. That's just the reality. Whether it's the characteristics of this area, of this property, or the characteristics of the Northridge property, or the characteristics of the Martell property, this place, this part of town, is essentially a large swamp with a lot of trees growing in it. And that's what it is. Has tremendous value for wildlife. It has tremendous value for the hemlock forest. Those are all things that are there. The potential to get a trail through there, don't bet the farm on that. It's going to happen. I think that would be ill-advised. I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but I would be very surprised if it did. So we think we've achieved what we were asked to do, to map it out, to find a way to have that pond go to somebody who would want to have it. Do it in a way that didn't invalidate what we had already proposed and what had already been worked out in the plan. Do it in a way that wouldn't preclude any of the options, these sort of what I would call secondary things about this potential path that's not of priority status on the town's official map, that we could accomplish all of those things and satisfy everything. And so, that's really I guess, to get directly to your question, Ted, Mr. Glaser, Mr. McElroy had something sort of worked out, an agreement. We didn't think it was going to be a problem because of all the reasons that I just stated. We thought we were doing the right thing. We thought we could do it in a way that would still uphold all of those other values. So we didn't really foresee this as being the stumbling block that it's turned into.
Okay, thanks. I think if we can come back and ask more questions to everybody and anybody in the room, but I did, with the board's permission, like to get
We have like 22 people
the
on
neighbor.
lines. We probably should let people talk if they want.
So, and if you can identify yourself, please.
My name is Mark McElroy. My wife and I own the house adjacent to the Glazer's land, adjacent to the pond. And the changed area of the property boundaries that we're talking about comes up right next to the pond, right into our backyard. And the suggestion from the planning commission to have a path easement there is particularly upsetting because to be right in our backyard, very close to our house. And I get it, it's not our land, but nevertheless, it would be something we strongly oppose and resist in any way we can for as long as we live there. But as Ken and Emily have both said, it's also a little bit confusing because it seems kind of just generally unnecessary for two reasons. One, there's been two assessments on the record that the land is not suitable for a path because it's a wetland, from the applicant early on and also from the state of Vermont more recently. And two, there already is a path easement the town owns very nearby, going in the same direction that this changed boundary is proposed to enable. So I'm not sure it's useful or productive to continue down that road, but again, it would be something that we oppose strongly, and we would urge the board not to pursue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
I've got someone on Zoom who has to hop off to another meeting. If
Okay.
We're gonna open things up. I'd
sure.
ask if I could
Yeah, let's go ahead.
him first.
Yeah.
Hey, John, I saw your note. You have to jump to your own board meeting here, so let me connect you here just a moment.
Yes.
All right. I appreciate very much what you've done in the due diligence of this plan. I served for 4 years and run House of Representatives on the Housing Committee. So I'm used to some of these conversations that are happening, but tonight I really want to also speak in support of the substantial benefit of this and sort of the generosity the town has looking at the land and making it actively swept. Because in 2010, I moved to Vermont, and I brought along a shipment pony with my family, 10 barns. I lived in Allocation, but I wanted a barn that would work for me. I'm paraplegic, I walk with a cane, and have a lot of mobility issues, and my pony pulls me in a cart. So I needed a supportive environment that can work within my limitations, and of course it takes for me and the other people to farm. And they, in the 14 years I've been there, I've watched little kids come in and pony camp, which is a 5-day immersion over the summer, a week long, and hear them yell and scream and say happy days of their life when they're with these animals. Unfruitful kids come in therapeutic situations, and rifles and feel for the first time to achieve something. I brought along a friend of mine who's on the spectrum, and because he wanted to meet the pony, and there he was proving the work. And I also watched kids go from pony camp to having seen a horse there, to owning their own horses, coming into their own empowerment, watching them grow. Two of them are veterinarians now, who, are little kids, they clean the stalls when I first came in 2010. And it's a place where a lot of people go through there every week, but hundreds go through there in the summer of kids. And I know some of you visited the farm, but to watch this. And every Sunday, there was a 93-year-old woman who comes every Sunday. She would work. Pretty much the only time she needs to come. So from 4-year-olds visiting, from 6-year-olds at 20 camp to 93-year-olds, this is a place that is pretty profound community benefit for Williston and Chittenden County. And, you know, so to have part of this deal be that 35 acres would be leased back to the farm, keeps another farm in Williston. There aren't many farms left, as you all know, and it's you know, a really key thing. The other, I wanted to mention King Street is a center that works with a lot of new Americans. And during Pony Camp, we had one of the kids was on scholarship. And the kid's father wrote a letter to Windswept saying that, you know, this is the first time his daughter's ever encountered something filled with such happiness. And so Windswept is a place where everybody thrives and excels. And, you know, I looked at a lot of barns to figure out what would be the best home for me. And it's really the best home for this whole community that I've lived with for 14 years. So that's a key part of the substantial benefit, I would say, as well. And I'm sorry, I know you're talking about the other part right now. I have to jump to a South Burlington City Council meeting right now, but I appreciate really your due diligence on all this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So there are a number of people obviously still in the room. Assuming that you folks are wanting to make comment and state your piece. So come up, sir, please.
Good evening, I'm Mike Moss. My wife Tina and I are the operators of Windswept Farm. We've been in business for over 50 years. And we hope to continue for many more years benefiting the young people of Williston. We have been gratified to see the number of people, students, parents, who have either written letters or participated, expressing their support for the farm and their appreciation of the time spent with us. If this proposal is approved, we will continue to provide after-school programs, summer camps, all of those things which benefit the children of Williston. The alternative proposals, which would appeal to a major developer, would force us to cease operation after a 50-plus year span. During that 50-year time, I have experienced the uniqueness of our state and the town. And all of this can only be preserved through careful and well thought out development. The Glaser's vision, as embodied in the specific plan, allows a large proportion of the property untouched, and more importantly, its significant views intact. It pays attention to the agricultural history of our community through the continuing operation of Windswept Farm. We in Vermont must take care to preserve that which makes our state so special. And we must encourage the maintenance of a balance between open space and residential housing to preserve that aesthetic which we all enjoy. If this parcel were to be developed by a major player whose goal is the maximization of profit, our town could easily resemble many other urban areas with a multitude of poorly sited houses without surrounding opening space and sacrificing the aesthetic for profit, making our town less visually appealing and less people-friendly. The Glazers are proposing to donate a large portion of the parcel valued at more than $1 million to Williston, bringing their vision for the land to fruition and establishing that desirable balance between development and open space. I urge the Select Board to accept this gift, which will benefit all of us as residents of Williston. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moss. Yeah, please do.
I'm Tina Moss and my wife and run Windswept. And just wanted to tell you what we do at Windswept and the benefits we have for Williston and the community. My focus as an equine professional is to work with kids and young adults. And through this, working with horses, they learn empowerment, they learn assertiveness, become strong individuals. So many life lessons that they learn. Horses are not easy. They don't do always what you say. You can't just make them do it. You have to learn how to compromise with them. And there's so many life lessons involved with that. I have tried, I've run Windswept. We make a big community for people to join in with us. I have a big summer camp. I employ the kids in the area so they can have a first job experience. And I'm not an easy boss. I'm fair and I work hard, and I expect that from them. We have like more than 100 kids come through the camp. We have our counselors. And also, if there's any neighborhood kid that wants to just join the mass of campers and counselors and whoever's there, I let them. If they want to come and help us, they're welcome. I'm going to say this now, and then I'm going to end up with so many kids. I just really, I think that kids need to have open space, safe environment, be able to be outside, be able to play together. For me, that's very important. Well, we just started a pony party where we're having the little ones come, and they're all dressing and meeting ponies and stuff. Just trying to get the people in, give them something to do outside. So the way I see it, if you vote yes to this specific plan, you allow us to stay in business. You keep the open space where the horses are on Old Stage Road, the heart of the residential development. If you vote no, it will close us down and you'll just have a bunch of houses there. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other folks who wish to make comment? Sure.
All right, so again, my name's Mark McElroy, and my wife and I are joining landowners. I'm right behind Windswept Farm, actually. And I'm also here to urge approval of the proposal. So like Mike and Tina, we'll see parts of this development every time we look out our window. And so you might ask why I would have strong support for the proposal if that's the case. And the answer to that is because of the nature of the debate on this that I've witnessed over the last year and a half. And I've seen a lot of people, person after person, first react kind of naturally with opposition to the development. And I've seen time and time again over the last year and a half that perspective fade away when the realization comes that the debate we're having is not to develop the land. The debate we're having is, does the community want 100 homes built there or 200 homes built there? Do we want a situation where Windswept Farm can operate or not operate? Do we want to preserve the aesthetic open space character of the neighborhood, including the view of Camel's Hump? And do we want the town to receive this land gift that's worth millions of dollars. As a community member and a resident and an adjacent landowner, I believe the smaller footprint is the obvious better option for the people living right around this location. So what is the cost of all of those things? We saw a very detailed, quantified presentation of the build-out scenarios in the last meeting a couple of months ago. We're talking about an acceleration of build-out of a few years. Even if I think the estimates we saw were under 5 years maybe, but even if it was 5 years, these time spans are inconsequential and negligible to receive these kinds of benefits that I alluded to a second ago, forever, basically. So, again, I believe that smaller footprint option, the proposal, should be approved and is a clear benefit to all the community members.
Thank you. Other folks in the room?
Hi, my name is Pam Allen. I am me and my family are residents of Williston. My daughter is 10. She goes to Williston Central. And I'm also here in support of Windswept as a benefit to the community. Windswept is a unique community, not just within Williston, but also I think regionally. We've been to several barns through no fault of our own. We've been to several barn communities, and Windswept is unique in that it welcomes people of all ages, all experience levels, and it's been nice because Mike also ate those fields recently, and my daughter got to see where her pony's food came from and all that stuff, and we got to sweat in the summer and help throw the hay in the mow and things like that, which is wonderful character building for a child. And
you can help Mike next year.
But she does want to run my chainsaw. My husband let her run her once. Anyway, I digress. I'm also an electrical engineer. I'm a very pragmatic and logical person, I like to think. And I believe in equity and people being able to afford homes and all that good stuff and energy efficiency. I really think that's important. So I really do believe in trying to preserve open spaces and but still being able to have affordable housing for people. Let's try to have it all. And as a resident of Williston, I've been proud to see this process, although this whole pond thing just came out of nowhere, and I feel for Mr. Glaser having to deal with that out of the blue, but I feel for the most part the process has really converged on this nice confluence of things that benefit everybody. And my daughter, up until recently, we were boarding my horse and my daughter's pony at the barn, and sadly my daughter's pony, he was 35 years old and he passed recently, and it just devastated my daughter and me. And he was in great shape towards the end. He's just this scruffy little kid's pony, but Tina took great care of him, and everybody really helped support us through losing him. And it was, he was a great guy. Anyway, I'm good. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Other folks in the room?
I'm Robin Young, resident of Williston. And I will disclose that I am part of the Windswept community. I have a couple of horses there, been there for many years. But I also want to speak just as a community resident. I value everything that has been said about Windswept, and I don't want to see that business disappear. But as a community member, I support the specific plan greatly. I mean, the land here is zoned for development. So it will be developed. And the value of the specific plan is that there'll be fewer houses. And also the view shed of the mountains, I greatly appreciate. Every day I drive down Mountain View Road and every day I look at that mountain, or if there's no mountain because of the clouds, I look at where the mountain should be. But I really value, it just gives me a sense of peace. It helps me relax, take a deep breath as I turn the corner to go to Windswept, because you never know what my horse is going to be up to. The other thing is that in addition to being a member of Windswept, I use the path that goes North Williston Road, Mountain View, Old Stage, Main Street. I use that bike path as a walker, a jogger, a biker, and I've used it for many, many years. And over the years, I've seen all the open land just be swallowed up by development and housing going in. And here's an opportunity to keep a large portion of the land along that path open. And I would very much like to see it open and remain so. So it's both as a Windswepter and a community member at large, I urge you to please support the specific plan.
Thank you. Other folks in the room? Please come up.
Hi, my name is Grace Hemmelgarn. I am a resident of Williston and another member of Windswept Community. I started there as a 7-year-old camp kid. I became a camp counselor. I started doing barn chores. I leased a horse. I own a horse. I am still there. I'm 23. I went to college and I've come back. I have achieved success in my education and in jobs that I've had because of the lessons I've learned there. So I'm not going to elaborate too much longer, but I'm evidence of how Windswept is creating people like me in this community. I'm also someone who studied environmental science, and I'm passionate about thoughtfully developing land in a way that benefits ecosystems and benefits us as humans living on this planet. And I see this plan as a way to allow Windswept to continue, but also a way to reduce the number of houses we're putting on a land that is, as my mother just pointed out, zoned for development. And I think that this specific plan is an opportunity for us to really think about using this land to benefit us as people and for the ecosystems. And I'm very much in support of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the room? Eric, are there people online who wish to participate?
Yeah, I've got about a half dozen folks with their hands raised. So,
Okay.
I put in the chat everyone, but I'm writing down names as soon as I see hands. So we'll make sure we get to everybody here. So first person I have is Terry Marin. Terry, I'm going to connect you right now.
Okay, can folks hear me?
Yes.
Great. So my name is Terry Marin and I'm a Williston resident.
Recording in progress.
Okay.
I'm just making sure we have backup.
Okay, so here we go. We're recording. So my name is Terry Marin and I'm a Williston resident, and I'm also a member of the Conservation Commission. And I was, I guess, prepared to share with you what I shared with the Planning Commission a month or so, maybe 2 months ago now. But this whole issue of this boundary line adjustment, I sort of knew this was kind of coming up, but I didn't realize the implications, that it would be a stumbling block for the process to move forward. And I must say, I just think, just listening to Emily and other members and the Ken and the Glazers, that this really shouldn't hold this up. This really should be moved through as the November recommendation from the Planning Commission. There's a floating easement. It doesn't sound like there's going to be any change in making this boundary adjustment. So I just want to say I do support that this be approved tonight and we move forward. What I shared with the folks at the Planning Commission was that, 5 years ago, when I heard that this parcel was possibly going to be developed, that I was not in favor of any kind of development there, and that it should only be conserved, the whole 100 acres. But as I was attending many of these meetings with the committee that was formed for the specific plan, I learned a lot about the process and this particular project. I feel this is the best outcome for this parcel. If we were to let it go to another developer in the future, it would have 200 plus houses as opposed to the 100 being proposed. This would have even a bigger impact on the roads, the schools, the police, the fire, and everything that goes along with development. There are two very important benefits from this project. First is the preservation of the view shed with the fabulous views of the mountains, which folks have commented about. The second is maintaining the working landscape for Windswept Farm and other similar operations in the future. You know, whether Windswept, I hope Windswept Farm continues for, you know, another 50 or 100 years. But there'll be other, you know, once the specific project program goes through, you know, it will be available for, you know, working landscapes. And the other benefits that are protecting the wildlife habitat corridors, wildlife corridors, and future potential uses on this open space, land and wetlands, educational, water quality, and trails. There's so many, you know, opportunity or things that could happen on that piece of land. And in closing, I wonder what residents would be saying. That's what I said last time, in 2050. And we're working on this project about what is Williston going to look in 2050? And what would they think about this parcel? And the first option would be, if it did not go through, people would be saying, why didn't the town take the opportunity when they were offered this parcel to save the views and the working landscape for Windswept Farm? And if the town does go through with approving this specific plan tonight as the November 27th or whatever, people would be saying, I am just so happy that the town and the residents voted to protect the views and the farms for us enjoy today. Because once a development is built, you can never get it back. Thank you.
Yeah, next on my list is Kara. I'm going to connect you, Kara. And you'll just need to unmute, Kara.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, thanks. Hi, I'm Kara. I'm originally a resident of Richmond, and I'm currently a resident of Cambridge. I'm here to urge you to vote in favor of this proposition. I'm also a member of the Windswept community. I started there taking lessons, working in the barn, all that sort of good stuff. I'm turning 41 next week or in a couple weeks. So I've been affiliated with Windswept and I didn't get my first horse until about a little over 10 years ago. My husband is an active duty Marine. He's currently stationed on unaccompanied orders in Japan and Okinawa. I got my horse, Calvin, who still lives at Windswept today. He's 24, which is quite old for a horse. He's been there for almost around 10 years now. I first moved him there when we moved from North Carolina, which is where my husband was originally stationed. And then we moved to Philadelphia. And then 3 years later, my husband got orders to Seoul, South Korea. So obviously I couldn't bring my horse with me there. So I sent him to the one person I knew that would take care of him. And even if I wasn't there, that he would be well looked after no matter what. And that place was Windswept. So he lived there while I was overseas, and that 3 years overseas turned into 6 years overseas when we got orders to Iwakuni, Japan. And it was in Japan where I woke up to the worst nightmare any horse owner can ever experience. A ton of missed calls, and my parents and Dina were to get a hold of me. Calvin was very sick and he almost died that night. And I firmly believe because of Tina and her experience is the reason why he's still alive and thriving today. Like I said, he's 24, and the only reason he's still going as well as he is because of the level of care that he has received at Windswept. And it's not only Tina and Mike, it's the entire community, as others have mentioned. After he colicked and was very sick, other people were walking him for me since I wasn't there, taking care of him in my absence. He was there basically 9 years without me. I only moved back to Vermont over this summer, and I could finally join him here in person. I'm not just the absentee owner anymore, and I go to Windswept almost every day. I try to go every day. And the barn community there is just so strong and welcoming. I've been to other barns in other places in other states, and I always compare them back to Windswept because it's incredibly hard to find that type of community anywhere else. And I've heard everyone's horror stories about barns and barn drama and all that. So I'm incredibly thankful to have this wonderful place that is not only so welcoming and a sanctuary against the world, which is what all of our horses are really, sanctuaries for us to escape from whatever problems or bad days we're having, and equally as a place to celebrate triumphs with our friends and those we care about the most. So all this to say, it's an incredibly important place, and I encourage you to vote yes. Thank you.
Next, I have Olivia. I'm going to connect you now, Olivia.
Hi. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Olivia Siri. I'm 14 and a freshman at CVU High School. I have been going to Windswept Farm since I was 6 or 7, and before that, I was always, kind of drawn to the place. Just kind of has a magical aura. I know there's been a lot of this, but I'd really like to talk about Windswept and just its importance to the community and also to myself. For me, Windswept is one of the most important places in the world. Throughout my time at Windswept, I've learned more about myself and others than I think I could have anywhere else. I've been able to engage with other youth from around the state. I've also been able to work at their summer camp, which has given me skills with children that could be useful to me later in life and just come in handy in general. The camp is also an enormous benefit to the community. I've seen hundreds of kids go through the camp, and each one leaves with a lesson learned and a smile on their faces. I also started as a 7-year-old camper, and I've now continued to learn both about horses and about principles from Mike and Tina. Mike has taught me that hard work always pays off, and Tina has showed me how to always laugh at a situation, even if it feels stressful or impossible. Windswept has taught me how to work with other people in a professional setting and has showed me how important perseverance and dedication are. I hope that all of these lessons can be passed on to the next generation of kids as they were passed on to me. Windswept is also one of the only places left in the county that has been operating for as long as it has and has supported the youth and adults around them for as long as it has. Windswept is home to countless animals. It's like a second home to me, and it's also home to countless friendships. I've met my closest friends there, and people at this barn have become my community, my support system, and my family. For me, Windswept isn't just about the horses or the job. It's about the people and how they've impacted our community. I think that we should do whatever we can to protect Windswept, and it would be doing a favor to everyone in Chittenden County and its youth. Thank you.
Eric, anybody else?
Yeah, next, Kyle Sawa. I'll connect you now, Kyle.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'll be brief. My name is Kyle Sala. I'm an budding property owner to the specific plan, and I was also a member of the specific plan advisory committee. um, in general, I think this is a good long-term outcome for the town. You know, as we think not just 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 50 years from now, you know, I echo what Terry shared in that regard. You know, it protects the view shed, which I think future residents and people passing through will appreciate. Even considering if this was to not go through the specific plan and go through growth management 5-10 years from now, I think that this plan the town has in front of them would still be a better outcome than any other regular plan that goes through. I really think as it's presented, you know, we had this whole thing with the boundary line. I think as the applicant presented it, probably seems like the right approach. I did, you know, that was interesting. And yeah, so I again, I think this is kind of a no-brainer. Windswept, you know, we've heard a lot of great stories about that, so you know, I don't need to say anything else about that, but thank you. That's all.
Thank you.
Let's see, Ruben, I've got you up next. I'll connect you in just a moment.
Hi there. Can people hear me?
Yes, yes, we can.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for the opportunity. First, I'd like to applaud the town for ensuring that steps are established and followed systematically to ensure that a topic like this is that is of substantial and public nature, engages the people of Williston for the good of Williston. I'd just like to make note that on November 14, 2023, a pre-app review of the proposed subdivision was submitted to the DRB. So the pre-app included 3 concept layouts. You know, the first plan was 130 dwelling units. The second plan was 180 dwelling units, and the third plan is this specific plan with 109 dwelling units. Now, this specific plan has its pros and cons in serving what constitutes a substantial public interest. And there is a reason why a specific plan takes time, and that is because it has consequence to the growth management plan of the town, which should be a matter important to all Williston residents. I believe there is public benefit to the open space that is being offered to the town, i.e. 15 acres of view shed, but I respectfully would say it does not rise to the level of being substantial. The plan is not sufficiently substantial to grant exemption to the growth management plan of the town, because it was established by the town for the simple reason of managing the growth that is proportionate to the infrastructure and services that can be served well and reasonably by the town. To ignore issues that have been brought forward for public discussions such as traffic, wildlife, public service, and schools is poor foresight. The town serves the entire public community of Williston. The Old Stage Road, as everyone knows, is a critical corridor for through traffic, both for humans and wildlife. The consequence of this massive development off Mountain View, and particularly Old Sage Road, will no doubt affect their surrounding neighborhoods between Allenbrook School and Central School, as it will drag construction for many years to come. However, the impact of an exemption to the growth management plan is far-reaching, from infrastructure to services. People will say that, well, we can do something now, what we may not be able to do 10 years or so from today. But I would counter that people in government change, the way of governance can change, communities can change, policies and regulations can change. And lastly, my statement has nothing against the landowner or the horse farm, and of course, all the well-intended causes that they all share, but rather just to ensure that we have a pace of development that runs hand in hand and commensurate with the infrastructure and services for all people of Williston. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I am a very long-term windswept member, I will say, of the windswept community. And I simply want to echo what others have said about preserving the nature of Williston. I'm actually a Jericho community member as well, but I live in Jericho, but I go to the farm 4 or 5 times a week. I've been riding there for probably 25 years or so. And I think I can sum it up no more beautifully than Alice Walker, who wrote a poem called Horses Make the Landscape Look More Beautiful. And I think that those of us living in Vermont appreciate the aesthetic of this state and the nature of a horse farm in the middle of what is otherwise a fairly well-developed area simply provides an aesthetic that really can't be described. It has to be felt. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Thank you, Alice.
Then the last person I have is Kathy. Kathy, I'll connect you right now. Looks like you just need to unmute Kathy. If you can hear me, Kathy, it looks like you just need to unmute your audio to speak right now. Sure, it could be a technical issue, I guess.
Okay, so we think she's...
Kathy, if you can hear me, would you type something in the chat? Not getting anything back.
Okay, that kind of reminded me of a seance right there for a second.
Oh, Kathy can hear me. Hey, Kathy, looks like you just need to unmute on your end. If you're having a microphone problem, oh, let's see. I'm not sure. If you want to type your comment in the chat, I'd be happy to read it. It sounds like microphone's not working.
Okay. So let's give it a second.
I had one more thing to say.
Sure.
Seance is over. Should we wait another minute?
No, go ahead.
Okay. I really wanted to express my appreciation for so many of the people who spoke on behalf of this specific plan. And it reminded me of the intention that my wife and I had when we originally wanted to go this route. And it was to create something for generations that would be a benefit to the town. And I can say that the process that we've worked with through the town has actually made me very proud. With the planning commission, the advisory board that was convened, there was so much thought and so many details that were worked through, so many perspectives and opinions that were expressed, and then they came together to form what we eventually turned into our proposal. I was very proud to be part of it because I think what we submitted at the end was much greater than what my wife and I had conceived individually. And that brings me to the reason I'm speaking now is again to ask you to disregard the most recent transmittal by the Planning Commission, because I don't think it falls into that category. I don't think it was well thought through. I think in the long run, if I step back to see what was our vision, it was to make something clean and a benefit to the town. And what I saw with the crazy boundary line adjustment, I'll call it half-baked, maybe not crazy. It doesn't really accord with the spirit that my wife and I had intended to convey the land to the town. And I'm I'm a little bit concerned because to me, I hate to have like this like spur in, sorry for the use of spur.
No pun intended.
I'll call it a burr. It's like a burr under my skin. It's not right. I think that that last boundary adjustment does not sit well with me. So again, I'm just asking you to disregard that and look at all the positives that have come out of our long work and our proposal. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Eric, did we get a comment?
Kathy rebooted, so we're going to try again here.
We should also probably acknowledge the letters that we've received.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Kathy.
All right, finally. I had to reboot. I apologize for the earlier problem. I'm a resident of Williston and have been for quite a while. We do have a horse at Windswept. Windswept has been a great learning center for my children and my family. I think the biggest lesson that they have put out there is respect. The land has been respected. The Glazers have done a great job working with Windswept over the years. The land is beautiful. I think to the points made earlier, when we look 20, 30, 50 years down the road, this plan shows the balance of the need for housing, but it respects the land and preserves a beautiful piece of the land for the community. So I support this plan and hope that it moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric, is that everybody on?
That is everyone.
Okay. So given that, I think the public hearing has served its purpose, and I think the motion would be in order to close the public hearing.
I move to close the public hearing on a specific plan of the Glaser property.
Is there a second?
A second.
Further discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The hearing is closed. So I think the first order of business would seem to be whether we vote on the plan that was presented and duly warned, or whether we preserve the testimony that was taken today and then warn another hearing on the Planning Commission's most recent submission. So if we could talk about that and reach a decision.
Well, I'm all for connectivity. I think that needs to be a priority in our town. Connecting neighborhoods, connecting communities, and in achieving our energy and environmental goals, and making this a walkable community. From what I'm hearing from Emily in our own planning office, changing this pond BLA boundary is not going to substantially impact the walkability. It's not going to substantially impact the connectivity, and those goals will be achieved in the same way with the boundary in its existing location. So I would be in favor of leaving the boundary as it is in the November proposal that we're discussing.
Planning Commission has done a wonderful job presenting all of the facts over the course of a year and all the things that went with their deliberations. But I think they erred in this last part. Usually when things come from a commission or a committee or a board, there's been an effort to come to an agreement with all parties, and that didn't appear to happen. So I will be voting to adopt what has been what's been warned tonight.
I'm with Greta and Terry. I think it's time to just move on.
I agree. I thank Mike and Tina for what you've done with your farm. It's wonderful. I'm amazed what you've done. It's great. You've really done a lot for this community. Thank you very much. And Jack and Caitlin, thank you for your thoughtfulness.
I share I join the consensus. I think we should go forward with the vote on the specific plan as warned and not make modifications to it for the reasons that everybody else said. So if that's the situation, then let's talk about the specific plan and whether or not that would be voted up or down tonight. So the floor is open for select board members to weigh in on that.
Just clarity, do we have a motion that we're discussing, or are we just deciding if we want to have a motion?
Well, there was no motion to postpone or continue our discussion and then rewarn a hearing. So the discussion now is whether or not we adopt the specific plan that is duly warned. And you are pointing out a long and historical probably flaw in the select board and how we do things.
I didn't mean to.
And that's it. Well, and that's that we almost 99.9% of the time we have discussions before we make a motion and then ask if there's further discussion on the motion. Which
I just want to know what I'm
but
commenting on.
it's you know, the
Commenting on,
town,
do I want to vote, or how I'm going to vote?
yeah, but you know, that flaw in select board procedure has not destroyed the town yet. So what we'd be talking about now is whether or not to adopt the specific plan as warned. So, thoughts? I'll go first. I think I think it's a great plan. I think this is important. I think it is a model for balancing growth and preservation and public input, and I think it's great. The added benefit to windswept is also a significant factor. I will disclose that I've ridden a horse twice in my life, and one time was up a mountain in the Sierra Nevadas, and I was put on a very old horse that tried to scrape me off trees. And the cowboy who was running the thing said, "Yeah, he does that." So anyway, but that being said, I will put that trauma-inducing memory behind and think that this is a good plan. So that's my 2 cents.
I will disclose. I do have a child who actually used to ride horses at Windswept. And love Windswept very much so. But as children are fickle, she is fickle. Hopefully she's not watching.
Trust me, she's not.
She is not. No, it's past her bedtime. My initial only hesitation with the specific plan was really that the public benefit would be equitable. I wanted to ensure that, this would be a benefit to our whole community and not just a specific subset of our community. As much as I love Windswept, I was concerned that, this, but through this process, I really feel that has been shown, that the benefit is beyond just the farm, which again, I do really value, is very important, but it is, I do see the benefit to our community at large. So, I'm in support of the plan as proposed.
So I'm not a horse person either. I do live in that part of town. I've raised my children in this part of town. The sewer district outside the growth center, fancy. It's got to be a number there. I value having working landscapes like the horse farm and Adams and other working landscapes in that part of town, even if it is really zoned for growth. So I value the working landscape. The viewscape, I appreciate that it is mentioned in the town plan. I don't think, I'm under no illusions that the town would ever buy it for $2 million for a landscape, but I think, for a viewscape, but I think since it is mentioned the town plan, it clearly has value to people who live here. And I value maintaining some open space along Mountain View. It really helps sort of maintain at least the illusion of a rural character to have 15 acres instead of having houses bump up right against the road. So that I value, though I do respect the comments of people saying, is that a substantial enough benefit to count? 18 houses a year, that doesn't feel like that feels like an amount that we can absorb. That's one of my bigger concerns. If we were putting 100 houses in 2026, I'd be concerned, but 18 a year I think is reasonable. I appreciate the smaller scale of 109 units versus 130 or 180. I think that's another thing that would be valued by folks in this town. And I respect the time and energy at the Planning Commission, the specific plan advisory, and the town staff. A lot of people have put a lot of time and energy into being very thoughtful about this, and I respect that. And I'll support their recommendation to approve it.
I agree with everybody here, and I appreciate all the comments that people wrote in on the screen. I read them all.
So if there is no further deliberation, there's not an actual proposed motion wording, but.
I have it.
Okay.
Got it. I'm going to move to adopt the Glaser specific plan proposal as transmitted.
I'll second it.
Is there further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The specific plan is adopted. So. Sure. If you're quick, we actually have to do the budget after this. So.
I'll give you a cup of coffee when I'm done.
Okay.
You know, I just thought it would be appropriate to say thank you. Thank you especially to the select board. I think you've made a very wise decision that will support the community now and far into the future, far beyond our lifetime. So thank you for that. And I really want to express my gratitude to the town staff for helping us in this process. You've conveyed so many very factual and important concepts, and you've been very rigorous in your application of rules and your judgment. And I also want to thank all of the committee members who volunteered and really put a lot of energy, and especially I want to thank Mike and Tina for being very supportive of this project and delivering really amazing an amazing environment for people, and it's something that inspires me, and I do hope that it will continue into the future. And I also want to thank the staff, Ken and Brian, who have been really instrumental in taking us from the beginning when it was just an idea to this final conclusion. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So
Go home now.
We'll ask the spirits to leave too now.
yeah, it is. Thank you. Folks, it is 9:15. Would people be okay with a 5-minute stretch break before we go on? Let's take a short adjournment, and we'll be back in 5 or 10 minutes.
Make chocolate.
Yeah. I came over the other day.
Oh, nice.
She loves it.
Yeah. My daughter does. The what, you know, it's funny, one of the things about working at Allenbrook, more so than any other school or any other place I've ever worked, the amount of sugar and treats that are just floating around there on a daily basis. For community members,
Yeah.
there's just constantly sugar everywhere.
Last thing you need with a K2 school.
Lucy,
Oh, well, I might have come off as complaining. It's not. It's very much appreciated. That's wonderful.
I wish there was less in central office. People just always bring stuff to put on the table. Like every time I walk by the table.
I know.
yeah, Lucy says the same thing, that people bring treats in for the doctors
Yeah.
in her practice, and like there's always
Mhm.
somebody brought in cookies or whatever. I'm like, yeah, they do the same for lawyers too. Everybody comes in appreciative of their lawyer. They're like, yeah, I love coming in to see you, Ted.
Geez, I would have had another Dr. Pepper if I knew we were gonna take a break.
Yeah.
We would have had dinner. We were
Oh,
going to
no.
go this late.
So,
Sure you don't want it?
Scott, are you? Okay, so everybody ready?
Yep.
Okay, so let's go back into session and hit the next item on our agenda, which is operating and capital budget work session. Eric, can you take us into that?
Yep, let's switch gears here. So revisiting the budget, originally we envisioned possibly approvals tonight, but I chatted with Ted and shared with the board the end of last week, recommending kind of go through the final steps tonight, and then we can have I anticipate a brief meeting next Tuesday to do the final legal motions to get everything approved for town meeting. So where we left it with the budget at your last meeting was looking at, in the capital especially, the question of the lease for the police body cameras and tasers for the first year of a 5-year lease program. Given the board's feedback and further discussion Shirley and I had, we had this in the capital budget for the equipment, but we feel this is really an operating expense with a lease payment. So it's a $30,000 item, and what we did is we did a final scrape through the budget, a number of categories, and we feel we've identified $30,000 in reductions to offset the addition of this, so it'd be a cost-neutral addition. I spoke with the chief more last week, and just reiterating, every agency in the county has these two items, and they feel it's certainly a very high priority, and I agree with them. So sends to the board this evening as a way to make this a cost-neutral addition to the budget, given where we are. The items we looked at, we took down the police training slightly, police overtime slightly. Listers, the tax maps, we can use the reappraisal fund for that $2,500. Taking down the building contingency, a little from traffic signal replacement, a little $5,000 from police cruiser replacement, $1,500 for document scanning from the planning office, $2,500 for professional services from the town manager, and $3,500 from technology budget to get to the $30,000. So I will pause there first because that was the only. One other thing for the capital budget as we're there. We'd gone back and forth on the potential bonding note for the Brick Church Fire Protection Project. We had, last week I shared, I thought this might be upwards of $465,000. This is good news. So we just got an update from the engineer today, and they feel $400,000 is a good number here, not to exceed. So in the column of, I'm looking at this summary sheet. If you just cross out the 475 and make it 400 for the Brick Church Fire Protection, that's the most up-to-date number I can provide for there. So I'll pause there on that.
And the 700 on the town hall parking lot does not include getting the grant money.
Correct. And I'll have a resolution for you on Tuesday just to support the project that we're applying for the grant that's due in February.
So when we looked at it last week with the bond potential interest payments, did we factor in the 475 or was it 400 that we factored in? I mean, I know it's not going to be a substantive change if it's 400 or from 475, but it would be something, right?
Yeah.
We were talking about that earlier too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was trying to remember if we just said, oh, it's not that much of a change, but hold on. Well, don't hold on. Go to your next question and I'll pull up the two schedules. I really have 400, the two schedules for that, the 700 and get you a accurate number.
Well, that was my question at this point.
Okay.
And then the the environmental fund, how do we handle that?
Yeah, so I'll go to the, I call it a workspace, so my larger spreadsheet I sent to everyone.
Yeah.
Just to how all the money's moving here. So we built in the Environmental Reserve Fund $30,000. That was the last entry from last meeting. Then the things I just mentioned are all shaded in yellow, including the 30,000 for the body cameras and tasers that offsets. So below that, you'll see the next column is how we've calculated. So the new expenses to add were 155,000 and change. Identified another 5,000 in revenue from the education tax collection service fee, 5,000 for additional recreation revenue, and then we come up with a subtotal of 145. I'll pause. Below that, you'll see there's $30,000 use of fund balance to offset ERF addition. Then above that, we reviewed the fund balance analysis to consider another $20,000 of fund balance. And when that 50 of fund balance is used, the remaining amount of money would be what's to raise additional by taxes from what we originally transmitted. So if you go to the bottom, the first box is what's we transmitted in December. That was a 0.3716 tax rate. So then you see additional property taxes to raise January 2024, the 95,000 to get our bottom line of taxes to raise of $8,080,000. That creates that tax rate of 0.3760. You'll see in the yellow shading, what was transmitted in December was just over a 3.5 cent projected rate increase. This is just under a 4% projected rate increase with the inclusion of the additional $20,000 of fund balance reduction. With our analysis of the fund balance updating, our view is should that additional $20,000 be used, it would put the fund balance at these are certainly a rough estimate because I'm trying to predict 18 months in the future here. It would be just over $2.4 million or about 15.84 of that updated bottom line for fiscal year 2025. Falls between your policy of 10 to 20% of operating. If thinking about that tax rate addition where it would be, it means about for the median home assessed at $300,000, additional of $119.50 in taxes per year, or about $996 per month, $39.84 per $100,000 of assessed value. So if the board should discuss that kind of calculations here. And the policy decisions for you are, expense bottom line, revenue bottom line, tax rate projection. If you want to discuss buying down that potential rate further, your buckets to look at are the fund balance and ARPA money with the caveat you have one time ARPA still. So those are the three decision points for this evening.
Thoughts?
Well, I really, really appreciate that the work that the town staff has done to do yet another real final scrub to just pinch every penny and allow for what I agree is a really big necessity for our police department and these body cameras and making it so it is net zero and that something that is a perpetual cost is not going to be, coming out of ARPA funds, which is, something, again, we've worked hard to do. So thank you very much, though, to everybody involved for really, really working on that. This is, I think everybody knows, I feel using more fund balance at this point, really, I think the 20,000 makes sense. Going and dipping under that 16 feels like a big a big step, but I think that, you know, an additional 20,000, and that small dip is not huge, and so I would support it, but I would not ideally want to take more out of fund balance.
So Greta, to answer your question, the interest on the $400,000 loan has a shorter life on it is $13,430. And these schedules did come from Vermont Bond Bank. But the schedule they ran for the Old Brick Church was for the full 900,000, which is 9,200. So that's going to be a little bit less. I mean, depending which way we go with ARPA, but it'll be a little bit less. But with just those numbers, it's $23,600 for interest. So it's actually a little bit more than what we have here, but it's not quite the 23, but I can roughly recalculate it. So it's
Wrong
not-
direction.
Yeah, wrong direction.
You gotta be careful when you ask those questions.
Yeah. Wrong direction, but we'll some set of savings.
Yeah, I mean, the caveat, these two, we don't know what the coupon rate or interest rate's going to be till the
Right.
sale
Oh,
closes.
yeah.
So we can leave it where it is now, and
Yeah.
it's your discretion.
Well, I don't think anybody likes a 12% increase. Wouldn't do it if we could. I can tell you that I've tortured Shirley on this budget in great detail, and I don't see any fat. So if we don't want to use fund balance and we don't want to start applying ARPA funds to ongoing costs, our opportunity to reduce that number is to cut services. And I would be unwilling to do that without having the community tell us to do that. I guess this is where I'm parked, and this is my first town budget, so I have to take that with a grain of salt, but I don't see any way to take anything meaningful out of this budget without taking out probably public safety staff, which is going the wrong direction.
I support, the library. I think its current location is not, forward thinking for the future, and the parking there is not going to ever be supportive of it. But I'm not for the community center. If we're struggling this much now, trying to do this, spending another $100,000 or more to study the community center, we're talking about a $50 million building with potentially $5 million a year in operating expenses. We can't afford to buy, we're struggling to find money for tasers and video for the police officers and hiring more police officers. I don't see how we can justify spending any money on, the community center in the future.
So correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, but I think that 150,000 is not in this budget. It's in the ARPA.
Yeah, part of, we parked it in the capital budget as part of an ARPA allocation.
But you could, if you decided not to do any of that, it wouldn't change this.
It wouldn't change the operating budget, correct?
Right.
Why couldn't it go towards, the fire suppression or go towards another police officer?
Well, so fire suppression, that's a legit question. We could have a conversation about applying, that would make the bond smaller, I guess, right? Instead of having a $1.1 million bond, you could have a $1 million bond. That's reasonable. I think what the discussion we've been having about ARPA funds is that they run out. So if you pay for a police officer with that money this year, you have to let them go next year.
But how are we going to afford a $50 million building, and how are we going to afford $5 million a year in operating costs?
Just to have the numbers, what we've looked at in the preliminary analysis, the rough number would be, it's still a big number, but $20 million for the way it's designed for the community center. On the initial scoping, the library addition, around $10 million project. Those are big numbers. This proposal takes that project a bit further. It takes for a schematic design for the library addition, and it also looks at a site analysis for potential of where to locate a future community center and answers more of those questions for design as well.
So to me, it's not even money that we're, if I was spending my money with my budget in my house, I wouldn't be spending money on something like that. Wasn't going to be paying for something. To me, that's not paying for anything.
Some year, the community was gonna have to figure out whether they're willing to finance it or not. And it's not this year.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately it will go to, I mean, it will be a matter of a bond vote to pay for the library expansion, to pay for a community center. And so the community will have the opportunity to weigh in further. I think for me, I think, the community has really overwhelmingly said that this is something that they want. Whether or not they want to go to the next step and pay for it later on is another thing. But I think that, based on the feedback that's been provided and the information that's been provided, the community has wanted this. And so taking the next step and using the ARPA funds, at least, from my perspective, makes sense to do.
I kind of disagreed with the community feedback because I didn't take that interview because I didn't agree with any of the questions. I know a lot of people didn't agree with any of the questions. Questions were, what do you want? They weren't, what do you need? They had nothing about, do you feel it's necessary? I thought it was a loaded interview, loaded questionnaire. It wasn't inaccurate. It was based, somebody spun it for that positive feedback.
We got a lot of people saying that they didn't want it too. And so, but yes,
So in the interest of time for this purpose, I think the only intersection between that discussion and getting the budget put to bed is to say we want to apply some of the $2 million of ARPA funds that we have available to buy down the budget. Right? It could, we're going to decide what to do with the ARPA funds later. I guess it's only $1 million. We've already kind of promised $1 million of it in this budget, right? So we have $1 million left. Is there some way we want to buy more down? And I guess I'm struggling with how much we would have to apply to make a substantial difference, because we would be giving it. Well, we haven't decided if we want to spend the 150 on that for that purpose. We didn't put it in the budget, but we haven't.
Well, we will.
You could tonight if you want. So how I set this up to consider is to consider approving the capital budget as presented. We park that in the capital budget. Then a motion to allocate the unassigned fund balance as reflected in the capital budget. Then a motion to assign the ARPA funds as reflected in the capital budget. Recognizing that these are FY25 capital projects that will continue in FY25, we could start potentially that community center library project earlier if it's ARPA allocated. But if the board wanted to pull out any of these ARPA projects for further discussion, it could get pulled out of this capital budget and continue discussion at a February meeting for ARPA.
Okay, so is that number 11? Is that where we make that decision? Is that our agenda item 11, capital budget and program?
Mm-hmm.
So number 10.
So it's in 10.
It's in 10.
Oh, I got it.
10 and 12.
Okay.
Yeah, so I thought structurally you're adopting your budget first and then you are assigning the funds towards that budget you've adopted. The board adopts the capital budget. The voters approve as part of the general fund what's going to get transferred into that first column of the capital budget.
So I guess I'm a little bit confused now. And I admit I spent like 4 hours trying to understand the capital budget. I'm not sure we're entirely there yet. Because sometimes we're just putting money aside and sometimes we're actually buying things. But so I'm working on it. I'll get there. But the 150, if we decided yes or no on the 150,000 of ARPA funds for the library, would that affect these numbers?
No, it would not.
No.
Okay, so we could vote to approve the operating budget, but then when we go to the capital budget, we could have a discussion about that.
Yep, and you don't have to vote to approve the operating budget tonight. What we want to do is get your final direction on where the numbers should land. We'll get the final
Numbers won't be ready.
bottom
Oh, yeah, I know, but I mean,
for next week, but
yeah, if it's plus or minus 150, I mean, we have to have the warnings done next week, right? So we don't have a lot of time to think about it.
the 150 won't be part of the warning.
Right.
So
Okay.
it's a unique situation here. We have these ARPA as its own pool of money, which plays into the capital budget. The board doesn't have to adopt the capital budget tonight either. If there was, if there was something in here you wanted me to pull out, or you could amend it and say, for that project, for example, take the 150 out of the capital budget for right now. We want to discuss that further during the ARPA discussions. We could go that route too.
Got it. So in this agenda item, we're not approving. What are we doing? We're just discussing. We just discussing tonight?
Number 9, where we are is, we're discussing both. And then at number 10, you could consider adopting the capital budget tonight.
Okay.
I tried to make it, with all these moving pieces, put it all on the cover sheet as the reference point.
All right. Well, personally, I'm okay with the operating budget. And I don't think I have any more questions on the operating budget. And I think, Mike, your question is on the capital budget. So, does that make sense?
Yeah,
So we come back, talk about capital budget.
A little bit. I mean, I'm inexperienced. It's my first time. Sometimes I don't know when to speak up, and not to speak up.
So bring it. It's better to do it too early than too late.
That's what I feel sometimes.
Right. So can we kind of say that we're...
Yeah, the only, and I'm probably an outlier on this, but the unassigned fund balance, I've never been as concerned about spending that a little bit more than town staff is. And I'm wondering if it's not a strong, I'm not making a recommendation, it's just a question, is like, would this be the year to spend more of that? Because we do have a substantial increase in our budget. There has been a wave of inflation that is reducing now, but we're dealing with that. At the same time, we're dealing with increasing services with fire and police, with paying the police more so they wouldn't keep getting poached, and paying more firefighters because we needed them. It's not a long-term solution in any way, but it might take a little bit of the sting out. But that being said, we'd have to really invade it to a degree. I'm not willing to invade it to make a significant difference.
Is it fair to say like you could take a point off the tax rate for $100,000? I'm just looking at
We did that last week, right? We did that calculation. Shirley, remember we worked with how much money we would need to take.
The 95 looked like it added a little over a point.
One cent is 215,000.
215.
Yeah, for each cent.
Yep.
God forbid, if the budget is defeated, we have nowhere to go if
That's
we
another good point.
That's a good point.
do things.
Yeah. So again,
Yeah.
I would describe my comments as musings.
Well, I'm kind of with you, Ted, because it always kind of struck me is that if we had some kind of a disaster that required $1 million, we'd probably come with either insurance or FEMA money.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it might be a cash flow issue, or you go and you ask the town if you can borrow money, so I'm kind of with you in concept, as I'm not that squeamish about taking more out, but that's a good point, Terry, that we've kind of squeezed the juice out of this pretty tight, so.
Yeah. So maybe it would make sense to leave it as is, and then if we have to revisit this issue in March, we'll have something else to consider.
Mm-hmm.
So, as is. But the other, I think everybody's in agreement with the budget numbers that Eric presented in his January 16 memo. Am I right about that? The body cameras, the overtime.
Yep.
Lister assessor tax maps.
That's the one.
No,
yeah.
If the budget's gonna go down, it's because we didn't spend enough on that.
So
No, that's going to the reappraisal fund.
we're gonna draw it
Yeah.
from the reappraisal fund,
Sure.
use that maintenance of the grand list. And interestingly enough, if the state moves to a statewide reappraisal system, and we have, I think, almost $500,000 in our local reappraisal fund, comes of how do we spend that money? And over time, we could
Right.
use it to offset the cost of the assessor's office budget, but that's down the road here. But ultimately, I don't feel the town should be giving that money to Montpelier because it'd be collected.
Yeah.
That's a discussion for another day.
So given that, are we ready to move on from our operating and capital budget work session? Do we?
No, now we're going to talk about capital, I think, just,
Yeah, but I mean, we're next to be capital budget. I mean,
oh, I thought that was just.
it's just reading the title of item 9.
Are we into capital
yeah.
budget item?
Yeah. Are we set with the operating budget and feel like we can come back next week and that which we've approved today will have the actual numbers and we can just give it our blessing?
That's where I'm at for the operating
Everybody okay
budget.
with that?
Okay. We'll do our final double check scrub this week, which we like to do we need to insert in the warning the expense bottom line and the amount to raise by taxes. So those are set numbers. They're approved. So good numbers to double check. Triple check.
Okay. So next would be the capital budget.
Yep. So that summary sheet. So this is reflective of everything. I'll just go to the columns here again. So the operating column, that's everything that's funded through the operating budget. That's the 493,300 at the bottom. Then we have some projects that are funded through impact fees, and that's a separate fund. Then we have the fund balance column that was built into these. And then I parked the ARPA projects here to try to put it all together with some of these as projects. Some are split between ARPA and others. So my suggestion for the board is to consider adopting this capital plan and program as presented with the one change of the $400,000 number for the fire suppression. But it's up to you if you want to change any numbers here. I would say since you're good with the operating budget, the numbers for operating and fund balance and impact fee columns, you probably don't really want to look at those too much. It's mainly how we've parked the ARPA numbers and the debt numbers, which could be related to ARPA. You could certainly, we've treated ARPA as its own fund, so we're funding projects from ARPA as the board makes those allocations. So that money's available to spend today. So and the plan is more discussion in February to round out the rest of that $2 million that was available. So if there's something the board wants to pull out of this capital plan for further discussion with just ARPA separately, if it's just if ARPA's the only line that's funding it, I'd suggest that would be a direction to go in.
So the fire protection is 470 instead of 475?
400.
400.
That was the change we learned today.
I'm okay with everything on here, and Mike, I totally understand your thought that we shouldn't, that you're convinced that the town can't afford a community center, so why are we spending money up front? While I understand the concept, I personally would like to have more information about some options on that community center, and I do think at this point, I don't feel ready to make a decision for the town on that. So I would like to spend the ARPA money, definitely the part that's for the library, to get that to a bond, a place where we can consider a bond for the library expansion. And the community center, I have a lot of questions about the community center. And I think this money going towards clarifying some of those questions is why I would support leaving it in.
Me too. So, other questions or comments on the capital budget? If not, There is a motion.
Move to adopt the fiscal year 2025 to 2030 capital plan and program as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Move on. Unassigned fund balance assignment for capital projects.
So this is a question to then assign this money from the fund balance in this plan you've adopted. So per your policy, the board has the authority to set aside funds from the unassigned fund balance for a specific purpose. Capital budget identifies several projects to utilize the fund balance to assist in completion. To assign a portion of the unassigned fund balance to these projects as outlined in this budget document, there's a motion suggested for the 167,250 number.
Questions, comments, and considerations?
I have to just say I'm really uncomfortable with this process,
Okay.
that we're spending fund balance money without it being part of the budget. Just, I can see in an emergency situation, you might want to do that, but to be spending what could be substantial amounts of money outside of any public vote, to Terry's point, doesn't feel very transparent. So I'm not going to, I mean, if our lawyers and our auditors say that this is all above board, then let's move forward with it for this year. But in the future, I'd kind of like to have some conversation about whether that's good public policy.
Anything on the substance of the numbers?
No, I'm okay with all the
Yeah.
issues. They're all here. I mean, they're all good projects that we need to do, so.
Yep. Yeah, I share your concerns. I guess my thought back on it is that, again, this sounds more grandiose than I mean it to be, but it is, we are the representatives. We all won election. People chose us to make decisions about this kind of stuff, and in this kind of unique year, I don't us as the elected officials making this choice. But I agree with you that overall this could be seen to be slightly less transparent than otherwise, and we can revisit it next year. But if there are no other questions or comments, there is a motion.
I'll move to assign $167,250 of the unassigned fund balance to the capital fund for projects as identified in the fiscal year 2025 capital budget.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Moving along, ARPA fund allocations.
Wait, there's another page?
So
The last one.
in a similar model, this asks the board if you want to assign ARPA funds to the 696,000 as reflected on the summary sheet here.
Questions or discussion?
So when we approved the capital plan, it didn't include those columns, or we're just kind of being redundant?
We're being redundant.
Okay.
Yeah, as trying to decipher this, approve the plan, then approve the the different money trounces within that plan.
Okay.
There are no further questions. There is a proposed motion.
I'll move to allocate 696,000 of American Rescue Plan Act funds for projects as identified in the fiscal year 2025 capital budget.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The
Nay.
ayes have it. One nay. Okay, brings us to manager's report.
I'll be brief. There's one last thing to bring up regarding bonds and budgets and things that I didn't mention yet. So we had a discussion about the ambulance.
That's when I found out.
I know. So I chatted with the town attorney today. We exchanged some messages on that. His suggestion is to hold off on that as a bond question until we're closer to purchase. Perhaps if the board wanted to warn a special meeting in November this year. It's an interesting spot because talked to our deputy chief today. This is going to be the new normal for fire apparatus and ambulances. We used to be able to order something, we'd have it delivered within 270 to 360 days. So we get it approved, get the bond approved at town meeting, we go to bond sale, it gets delivered, we pay for it. Now it's taking 3 years or more, and that will continue for many years. So we need to order things, and when they're due to be replaced, it's going to take, the reserves are spot in line, and then it takes multiple years for it to get built and delivered to us. So we're following up with the company this week to see, process-wise, what can we do to reserve that spot, and what's the options if we changed our mind, and worst case scenario, I thought we couldn't get funding for the ambulance that we wanted to order from a process standpoint, because the attorney's telling us, it's really not great to ask for bonding authority when you're going to go to bond sale like 3 years later. So we'll get more information on that, but I think for the purposes of town meeting here, given you have 2 other bonds on the warning, we'll get more information on this as well. It's an emerging issue. It's going to be an issue that's with us, and we'll have to come up with a pathway to deal with these things. We have an engine that's due to be replaced in, I think, 4 or 5 years, so similar conundrum here, and that's probably going to cost over $1 million to replace it. And how do we want to reserve our spot in line to get this built and replaced and paid for? So it's a issue that's going to be with us for a while here that we just need to work through a solution.
It seems that legally all you're really on the hook for is whatever, should you decide to cancel, do they keep $50,000?
Yeah. Yeah, if they're looking for a purchase order, and
Right.
then
Yeah,
the
that's
board's authority before. This will probably be over $500,000 for an ambulance now. It's gone up quite a bit. So just to remind, we'll have a brief meeting then next Tuesday. I'll have a series of motions to approve the operating budget, approve the bond resolutions, and approve the warning. So we'll get that wrapped up this week.
Then we get a week off.
Yep, then no meeting till February the 6th. So we'll pivot into outreach for the budget, because early voting will start likely in early February, I think. So what we typically do the last few years is do a full page budget infographic on the back of the Observer. So I'm working to get that designed the next few weeks. We'll have to have the warning in the Observer 3 weeks in a row with a bond note on the warning for town meeting. And then we'll just go forward with the process with the pivot after the money articles are decided here. And then quickly, you might notice the flags are not on the flagpole anymore. It's because the rope was broken in the windstorm and the flags got blown away. A couple were found down the street.
Wow.
Yeah.
We've recovered a couple flags, so we're just waiting to get the parts to fix the flagpole. So if anyone asks you,
Yeah.
it's getting worked on. And, that's all I have at this late hour.
Okay. Other business?
None for me.
Any final thoughts on agenda items from this meeting? And that being said, I will declare us to be adjourned. Thank you, everyone.